Well, more on that later. Our program guest this morning is the Climate Change Minister, Greg Combet. But before then, we'll see what the Sunday papers are reporting around the country, and a lot of attention, of course, on the 14-year-old Australian boy in custody in Bali on drug charges. And the Foreign Minister, Kevin Rudd, is starting to come under some criticism for his handling of it. Miranda Devine writes this morning, the episode reminds us what a stager Rudd is, always over-dramatising and setting the wrong tone. And she went on to say you would think the boy's arrest was the most important thing in Australia. David Pendlebury writes, Rudd's determination to immerse himself so dramatically in the issue probably says more about his domestic ambitions than the diplomatic handling of the case. Phil Curry, how do you read it?
Well, I think they're fair comments. The thing, I mean, this kid has been arrested right at the time Rudd is sort of increasing his profile dramatically. He's basically been in Australia for the last 2 weeks and done a lot of things that his detractors say are outside his portfolio. And then along comes this, which is Foreign Minister's business. You know, he's entitled to take this on, and he's probably, you know, the language has been very strong, a little bit too much gusto perhaps. Is it the most important thing? The little bloke, as he calls him, getting him out. But I think it underlies a sensitivity now that everything Rudd does, whether he's dinkum or not, is going to be, you know, seen through a different prism than otherwise would be normal, I think. And in this case, you know, this gives him a platform. He's entitled to talk about this. He's entitled to do 2 press conferences a day and update the worried nation and so forth. And you want to be a bit careful because it could backfire.
He's entitled to do all those things, absolutely. But there's a question about whether by doing too much of it, you make it a bigger media issue here and therefore put at risk the chances of getting this kid out of the Indonesian legal system. So there's a fine line that has to be, you know, stepped along here.
Yeah, and it's the nature of what he's saying as well. Let's hear what he did say in one of his recent doorstops. Here he is.
I think the intelligent approach with this is calm, cool, collected, safe hands, dealing firstly at a local level with the officials, dealing at a national level through our ambassador. And as for any further engagement from myself, I would only do so based on the advice of those officials. The point is not any form of political grandstanding. The point is achieving the best result for this young boy. That's what drives me, and to get this young fella home.
The point, though, is it an issue for the ambassador to get involved, as he puts it, we negotiate at the local level and then at the national level through the ambassador? They're there to look after the kids' welfare, but they're not there to interfere in the judicial process, and that's what he sort of implies by that, is that they can negotiate a deal at government-to-government level.
But you can try and save him from the judicial process. I mean, it's a little bit unsure. We've never had a minor caught in Indonesia in these circumstances before, so it's a little bit of, you know, unknown territory. And if this kid can be bought out before he gets charged and some deal cut, then that's obviously in the government's political interest as well as this kid's interest. I mean, in Rudd's defence, the tabloids are going nuts with the story, so, you know, and the broadsheets are giving it a fair run as well. So there is pressure on the government over this.
And Michael Stutchbury, and you're about to join the Financial Review as Editor-in-Chief. Congratulations for that. What's your take on this?
Well, I think you've got now Parliament coming back. You have these periods in Australian politics where Parliament goes on a break and other things happen. We've had the tax summit and the jobs summit, and we get back into the Parliament this week. And I think you do notice that one of the changes that you get in this time is that the Rudd factor is being ramped up by a degree. And so Kevin Rudd and things such as this, just from nowhere, the 14-year-old boy getting caught in Indonesia on drug charges, and the Foreign Minister who has been Prime Minister and could become Prime Minister again seems to be playing perhaps a starring role in fixing that problem. That goes to the headlines and just ramps up the thing, and so that'll play more and more into politics, I think.
OK, now there's a Sunday Mail story, which is a cracker. It goes to this whole issue of poker machines and the reforms that the government are looking at there. The Clubs Queensland inadvertently put something on their website that's not helpful.
Yeah, Porkies on Pokies. It's a good headline, and it's described inside in the Sunday Mail in Brisbane as an embarrassing blunder. So this is a briefing for Clubs Queensland about the whole Pokies issue, and I think probably the most telling point of it is that this suggests that the hit to the club's revenue from the Wilkie pre-commitment reforms could be sort of more like 10 to 20% rather than the 40% number that's around. This has been the number that's been out there, and it's been an up to 40% hit to clubs' revenue if punters were forced to do this pre-commitment. This is more like 10 to 20. That there are some scenarios here of what they call a Wilkie light and a Wilkie heavy, and the Wilkie heavy scenario of tough regulation would do a bigger hit to the ultimate bottom line. But I think it does show that there could be a significant, according to the club's own device, which they've just put up on the website inadvertently, could be a significant hit to their bottom line, but not as high as the 40% worst case, perhaps scare campaign.
And if they're serious about doing something for problem gamblers, and they say they are, they must take a hit on revenue. That's by definition. And you would think somewhere between 10 and 20% is a reasonable figure.
And I think what this shows is that we still don't have a lot of really hard data and evidence on what is the best way to go on this issue. Now, I think you probably do need to. We don't have any legislation. You don't really know exactly the format of what this pre-commitment rule would be, and we really need to have, I think, some evidence and a trial in the Australian context, in Australian clubs, to see how it would work. To see, is this most of cost-effective way of dealing with problem gambling?
But you say, Barry, if they're serious about tackling problem gambling, well, there's a really interesting thing. The last slide in that document shows them advising clubs about ways to get around the removal of ATMs from venues. So it says basically if the law gets changed and you're not allowed to have an ATM where people can pull out cash in the venue, either zone part of your foyer as a part of outside of your actual official club premises and just whack it in there, or put it on the wall outside or in the car park, which to me seems like a really cynical way of trying to get around a situation where people are enslaved to an addiction, and clubs can do some simple things to help people not blow tight family finances in their pokies.
And there's also some interesting revelations on their how they see the media strategy.
There are indeed, and this is a fantastic document, Barry, from Clubs Queensland, Media Relations, a guide for the Queensland clubs, which points out that media want stories brought to them, so if you could just package them up. Media are understaffed and overworked, they're in constant need of good stories, leads and sources, and yet they do not have the time or money to go and chase these. So whatever you can do to help package it up for them, that'd be great. And this other fantastic line, you don't have to put up with rude or unethical investigative journalists, but be aware of how you deal with these situations. Use the broken record technique and stick only to approved key messages and send them off to your spin doctor, your official spokesperson for the club.
I wonder where they learnt that strategy from.
Former journalist.
And Phil, the Labor Party in Victoria yesterday came up with two motions that both contradict the policies of the Prime Minister.
Yeah, the Victorian Labor Party passed a motion yesterday supporting the legalisation of gay marriage. So that now makes every state branch, except New South Wales, which squibbed it at their state conference a couple of months ago, but every other state branch now supports the legalisation of gay marriage, and so that sort of sets the scene for a Barney at National Conference in December. Julia Gillard's opposed to it personally, she says she is, but it's more than likely at National Conference it'll get up on a conscience. They'll allow Labor to have a conscience vote on it.
Does that solve the problem?
Well, it'll solve the problem internally, but it won't get through the Parliament because Tony Abbott's not going to allow a conscience vote. The Coalition will vote against it. About a third of the Labor Party will vote against it when a bill comes up next year, so it will go down. Labor can at least say, look, we tried, we put a bill in, it was a private member's bill, it was a conscience vote, it failed, but might get a few votes back from the Greens, but at the same time it won't go through. It's an incremental step. But I think probably more immediately and more seriously for the Prime Minister is they also passed a motion condemning, essentially the Malaysia plan, offshore processing. Now, this week in Parliament, possibly on Thursday, there'll be a vote on that bill that was held over from the last sitting to give the government the discretion to send asylum seekers where it likes. It's not going to get through the Senate. Julia Gillard is persistent in pushing ahead with having a vote in the reps. They need one vote. They're short one vote. Tony Crook is undecided, the Western Australian. There's a lot at stake if they lose that vote.
Yeah, I do want to raise that with you a little later on
too.
But
she wants a strategic victory on it. But
it's a critical vote.
It's a critical vote, but it's the left of the party saying we don't like offshore processing, and again setting the stage for another biff at National Conference.
Yeah. OK, well that's the Sunday papers, and we'll go to our program guest now, the Climate Change Minister Greg Combet, who joins us from our Parliament House studio.